Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Henney with Project Q Atlanta. Welcome to another episode of Q Conversations, our Friday live event series about LGBTQ issues. Today, we're talking elections and their impact on LGBTQ equality in Georgia. We've got some great guests to unpack all that's happened this week. Jeff Graham, with the Executive Director of Georgia Equality. Fred Smith, an associate professor at Emory University School of Law and a board member of Lambda Legal. He's also a former member of the LGBTQ Advisory Board for Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and a very special guest, Reverend Kim Jackson, an Episcopal priest who on Tuesday became the first LGBTQ person ever elected to the Georgia Senate. Hi, everyone.
Hi, it's so good to be here.
Good morning, Matt.
Thanks to everyone for being here today. Also joining us is Project Q's Mike Fleming, who is moderating the online chat, which is to the right of your screen. Drop your comments in there during the event. And if you have any questions for Fred, Jeff, and Kim, please put those in the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen. We'll be answering those during the event. So with that, let's get started. Kim, the first question goes to you. When you take office in January, you'll become just one of a handful of Black LGBTQ women state senators in the country. You'll be the only LGBT person in the Georgia Senate. Congratulations on your historic win. Has it sunk in yet?
It still feels completely unreal. And I didn't know until election night that there were only two other Black LGBTQ state senators in the nation. So it's all sinking in, and I don't know that it will be real until that bell rings to start the session in January.
Well, and have you had a chance to kind of think about your win? Is it a sign of the changing dynamics we're seeing politically in Georgia?
Absolutely. I do think that, the fact that a majority African-American, Latinx community, District 41 is incredibly diverse. And the fact that they elected an out queer Black woman is a testament to not just a change in Georgia, but a testament to, I think, a move throughout the South and across the nation to really welcome and accept LGBTQ folks as leaders, as people who should and deserve to have a seat of power at the table. And so I'm really excited about that and super honored to be among the number of growing LGBTQ legislators across the nation.
And a growing number in Georgia, which we'll get to in a minute. I also wanted to ask you, the Georgia Senate is often the driving force for anti-LGBTQ legislation in the state. It's also controlled by Republicans and no surprise to anyone, a whole lot of old white men. So how do you prepare to work in an environment like that?
Yeah, so I'm very aware of the demographics, to be sure. And I, like most Black people in the South, have had to work with white people for my entire life. So I feel very well equipped to do that work. And I also happen to be an Episcopal priest, and 90% of the Episcopal Church is white, and the average age is 65. So I have been ministering to and with people who don't look like me and often who don't love like me, but we have found ways to be in relationship with one another and ways to find commonality. And so I will bring those same gifts, those same skills to the Capitol to do the work of working across the aisle and working with people who have some different ideological beliefs than I have.
And do you think your background as a priest and in your background in the Episcopal Church, will that help you in the Senate?
Absolutely. I think it's actually really important. So when we look at the LGBT, particularly the anti-LGBT legislation that gets brought forward, it often originates in the Senate. And whether or not it's a spoken sentiment or not, it's often done under the notion of, being that Christianity, essentially, that God doesn't want these things for LGBTQ people, right? So state senators in Georgia have historically weaponized Christianity to harm LGBTQ folks. And what I get to do as a pastor, as a theologically educated and trained person, I can say that's just not true, right? Like I can counter those really, I think, poorly theologically sought out arguments and talk about the ways that, no, regardless of belief, quite frankly, we all are entitled to the same rights. But if we need to have a conversation over tea, I'm happy to do that, or a stronger beverage, I'm happy to do that with the state legislator to talk about the ways that Christianity should not be weaponized to hurt people, but in fact that Christianity at its fundamental values really does respect and love and care for all people.
Right. Jeff, you've been around the state capitol for a long time. What does it mean to have Kim in the state Senate?
First of all, I am so proud of Kim. She has worked really hard to get here. I think it's important that, there may be some folks out there that, because it is such a heavily Democratic district, may consider that, this was just a foregone conclusion that she would win this race. I think it's important for people to really understand how hard and smart Kim worked to make it through a primary that at one point in time had 5 or 6 Democrats running in it.
Yeah.
And so clearly she has earned her place here. And then just to pick up on what Senator-elect Jackson was saying, in addition to having a strong Black queer woman, and we've needed that voice in the legislature. In fact, I've been telling folks that I think it's akin to when Carla Drenner was first elected to the House 20 years ago. And it took a while to move that chamber, but what we see, what we've seen the last 5 or 6 years, is that the House of Representatives has just not had a stomach or an appetite to push forward anti-LGBTQ legislation. And I think it's because Carla, and then of course now joined this coming session by 5 other out members of the House, has really made that difference of having a seat at the table, but also someone that can build relationships. And that's where I'm most excited about Kim. Senator-elect Jackson, what she just said, she has been a strong faith leader in our efforts to push back against RFRA and other bad legislation over the last several cycles. And so she's well versed in what these issues are. She has been a very powerful voice to push back against them and to organize other faith leaders against them. To have this strong progressive faith voice in the Senate is also something that has been missing. There's a number of sitting state senators that are strong people of faith themselves. But what Senator-elect Jackson's going to be able to do is go toe-to-toe, scripture to scripture, with these folks that use their religion as a weapon against our community, but against other communities as well. And I know that she will be there as a constant reminder that religion at its best should be a unifying force that calls us to our better selves. She also is the embodiment of something that I have said over and over and over again since 2014, when these fights first started, that you cannot say it's the LGBT community against people of faith, because our own surveys show time and time again that the majority of LGBT folks here in Georgia do identify as people of faith. And so it's a false narrative to say that it's somehow LGBT folks against people of faith or people of faith against LGBT folks. And so these are just some of the reasons I am so excited that she will be there in the Senate this next year, and hopefully for years and years to come.
Well, and Fred, you have worked in campaigns and been involved in equality efforts for many years. Did you ever think that you'd see the day when somebody like him is elected to the state Senate?
Well, I mean, Georgia has, at this point, a tremendous delegation of LGBTQ folks. And so certainly I was hopeful. And when I met Kim, I very much had a feeling, I don't even know where it came from, but I had a feeling just her energy and her spirit sort of radiated through, and also a sense of seriousness and a sense of purpose. That and in a brief conversation, I felt a lot of that, and then her reputation precedes her. People who have worked with her speak about how well she works with others and how thoughtful she is, and how she does all of this from a place of conviction. When I see her work, not just on LGBTQ issues, but her work on capital punishment and so forth, she speaks with courage and she speaks with moral clarity. And so congratulations, Senator-elect Jackson. And she did work hard in a competitive primary to get here. And I'm glad she's the one to break that barrier and break that glass ceiling.
Kim, have you had a chance to give much thought to what committees you'd like to serve on when you're sworn in and the session opens in January?
Yeah, I have. I've thought a lot about this. Fred actually mentioned this. I've been working for the last 15 years to end the death penalty in Georgia, and also on other criminal justice reform issues. I think that that's perhaps one of the biggest issues that I've taken on as a faith leader, is to speak out and say that we have to release people from cages, particularly those who are nonviolent offenders. And so I'm very interested and hopeful to be on the non-civil judiciary committee. I know that's like the big committee and it's hard for freshmen, but I've made that clear that I desire to be on that committee as well. And then there's actually, so I'm a country girl by heart. I live on a farm. I grew up in the country where we called it gardening, but I learned when I moved into the city that what we were actually doing was farming. And so I'm actually very interested in working with any of the environmental or the agricultural committees that we have in Georgia. I think that oftentimes those of us who are in the metro area don't give enough attention to and advocate enough for our farmers across Georgia. And quite fundamentally, we can't eat here in metro Atlanta without the farmers in rural parts of Georgia and in urban Georgia. There are urban farms. And so I'm very interested in being a part of that work and really working to help make sure that our farmers receive the subsidies and receive the things that they need, particularly when we have instances of droughts or hurricanes, which we anticipate seeing more of that, right? And so I just want to make sure that our farmers receive the support that they have so that we can eat. And because I think that work is just incredibly important for all of us.
And with your election on Tuesday and Marvin Lim being elected to the Georgia House on Tuesday, there will be 7 LGBTQ lawmakers in Georgia, which is a record number. Just curious if any of you have any thoughts on what that's going to mean for LGBTQ equality efforts in the state.
Well, I certainly, frankly, momentum has been on our side for several years. And that has been due in large part by the good work of the folks that have been there for several years, in addition to Representative Drenner, Representatives Renita Shannon, and Sam Park and Park Cannon. Joining them last year, the last 2 years ago was State Representative Matthew Wilson, and they again there is an importance of having representation and the relationships that they have been able to build, and frankly the bipartisan work that they have been able to do. It's a team of really smart folks that we have down there who understand that Georgia, especially when it comes to the legislature, is going to be a purple legislature for the foreseeable future. And that requires building relationships with Republicans. As I had said earlier, for several sessions now, the House has been kind of a stopgap measure to keep bad things from coming forward. And I do hope that in 2021 that narrative can shift and we can actually see some good legislation that will offer protections to LGBTQ Georgians, greater support for people living with HIV and AIDS here in Georgia. Last year, we came incredibly close to reforming Georgia's antiquated and dangerous HIV criminalization statute. And so I hope that we see HIV criminal justice reform come back through the House. And actually, I would love Senator-elect Jackson to be on the non-civil judiciary committee and help make the argument of why HIV criminal justice reform is needed here in Georgia in the Senate to get us through there. I also think that attitudes are beginning to shift in the Senate as well. Some of the most vocal anti-LGBTQ senators are no longer going to be there. And I think that they have been replaced by folks, some Democrats that certainly have picked up some strength in the Georgia Senate, but frankly, I'm hopeful that folks like State Senator Brian Strickland is going to be a better champion on the Republican side on LGBTQ issues going forward. So I'm very hopeful for what it looks like for our policy agenda moving forward here in Georgia.
Okay, Kim or Fred, any thoughts on the 7 LGBTQ lawmakers?
Well, I mean, it's historic. I will say the least important part of it, but it's one that I love. I love the bragging rights. I love that. Like last year at a Victory Fund event, someone who's in the state legislature in Pennsylvania, when he was calling out the Pennsylvania he was calling out the Georgia delegation at that point, and already was sort of stunned by it. And it's wonderful, and it's a testament to the open and inclusive metro area that is Atlanta. And I hope with time that other parts of the state that we'll have more success there too. I mean, I guess one thing I'll say to build on Jeff's comments is also it's the intersectional component, which is that of the 7, 5 are people of color, and so when it comes to questions like criminal justice or including both of the sets of criminal issues that both Jeff and Kim have raised, and even when it comes to things like affordable housing, there's a way in which I think it will just be helpful and important for that perspective to be there, both because of the voice that it will create and lend to the legislature, and also because of the way that I think it's harder to engage in negative legislation against a group. When you have to work with someone and when you meet them and you have to look them in the eye and view them as a human being, and watch them kind of when they stand on the Senate floor and stand in the well. There's a way that their statements are they're witnesses. They're giving testimony about our lives, and so these are all important functions. And so I strongly believe in electing good, smart, competent, thoughtful, courageous LGBTQ folks to the legislature, and when it comes to folks of color, that intersectional nature is remarkable. Sam Park, Marvin Lim, Renita Shannon, Park Cannon, now Senator-elect Jackson, and those who came before, the Keisha Waits and the Simone Bells. It's remarkable. I'm so proud of the state, of this metro area, and I'm so proud of those courageous individuals who have stepped forward and done the hard work. It's not easy to run for office, and so the folks who have taken that step and done that work and put themselves through the ringer in that way. To say I'm proud is like it's an understatement. I'm in awe, and I'm deeply appreciative of their work.
I want to lift up there some names that have been called already, but I will when I'm sworn in, I will be sworn in 10 years almost to the day that Simone Bell was sworn in. And Simone Bell became our nation's first African-American LGBTQ state legislator in the entire nation. And so I am proud to stand on her shoulders and to really continue that work. And then, Carla Jenner, who began this work alone 20 years ago. I mean, in a time when it's unimaginable, quite frankly. I mean, I grew up in, kind of rural South Carolina, where 20 years ago, I remember asking somebody, do you know anybody who was gay? And nobody knew anybody. I mean, we did know, right? But nobody knew anybody. And so, and I'm just incredibly grateful for Carla Jenner. And I was saying this before the show, there actually is a sliver of my district that overlaps Carla Jenner's district. And so there are a group of people, mainly in Avondale Estates, who for the first time in our nation's history, and I think this is true probably across the nation, are currently represented by two lesbians, a lesbian representative and a lesbian senator. And I just think that is that's something worth celebrating. And I am grateful that Carla Drenner stuck around long enough for us to be able to merge in this way. And so I want to give thanks to them, to Simone, to Carla, to so many, to Keisha. And of course, I couldn't go without noting Barbara Jordan, who I think has been such an inspiration to Black queer women for generations now. And so this is just an exciting time.
It very much is. It's interesting when I remember when Carla took office, and that the fact that some lawmakers wouldn't even ride in the elevator with her at the state capitol, and now we have moved forward 20 years to your election, Kim, and to 7 LGBTQ lawmakers in the Capitol. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Well, 2 questions about candidates, and one is from one of our audience members, and wanted to know, how can we attract more Black and brown LGBTQ candidates who can win and add to that total of 7 lawmakers?
I mean, I will say that's a high priority for me. I have worked as a Black woman, as a woman in a predominantly male environment, as a clergy person. And it's hard. It's challenging when you're the only woman in the room. It's challenging when you're the only Black person in the room or the only queer person in the room. So I'm actually deeply committed to helping recruit. I have told some friends, I will be the first one to write a check for you, to support you in a race. That is a major part of this work. We cannot have more LGBTQ senators and representatives if we don't raise money for them to run these races. And so we as a community, we've got to rally around and help people. And then this is really important. And Fred named this, like, we aren't just like LGBTQ people who are cool. The people that are now a part of our 7 are incredibly smart and passionate and thoughtful, and they've been doing the work already. And so, we need to look into our community and find those folks who have already been working as advocates, who have shown the leadership, because that's who people vote for. People vote for people who they understand will represent them as Black folks, as brown folks, as queer folks, and who have a larger calling to make sure that we represent everyone well, and who have already put in that work. So I think that's the job for us as a community, is to go and call those people out and say, we support you. I mean, that's what I needed. I needed someone to say to me, I support you in this run. Here's a check. And that helped give me the momentum to do this work. And that's what I'm deeply committed to doing moving forward.
Okay. Jeff or Fred, did you want to weigh in?
The only thing I would add to that is, folks who are interested in running for office, I would really encourage everybody to go through the Victory Funds training program. I think it's one of the best candidate training programs that is out there. One of the reasons why Georgia Equality has never developed our own candidate training program is that we are lucky enough to actually have a good relationship with the Victory Fund, and their training program is just so good. One of their lead trainers, Joe Fold, who runs the campaign workshop, is frankly a campaign consultant that we use extensively when we do independent expenditures on behalf of candidates here in Georgia. So he not only understands what it takes to run and win office, he also understands very intimately the politics here in Georgia. So they've not announced their training schedule for 2021 yet, but people who are interested, I would encourage folks to do that and be thinking ahead. Folks should be thinking about 2022. 2024. It's not too early to think about that. I think it's also important for folks to think about running for a city council, county commission, school board seat. The one thing that I think progressives across the board here in Georgia are getting better at, but we're not there yet, and the LGBTQ community is certainly a part of that, is building a bench and thinking multiple election cycles down the road. So we really do need to be thinking about who's going to be running in 2022, 2024. I know that seems like a long way off, but in political time, it's just around the corner. And to get involved with neighborhood associations, to get involved with civic groups, to get involved and known with the voters that one day you will want them to support you. You can never start that early enough. And I think that those are some of the lessons that people need to learn. Again, it's great that we've got so many folks from the Metro Atlanta area. Frankly, I am looking forward to having more LGBTQ folks run for office and hopefully win outside of the Metro Atlanta area, because we are a statewide population and we deserve to have folks representing us on city councils, county commissions, and ultimately at the legislature, and hopefully someday Congress and the U.S. Senate from around the state of Georgia.
Well, and Jeff, that gets that point segues into my next question, which was I was going to ask, even with Kim and Marvin's wins on Tuesday, two other LGBTQ candidates lost, Julie Jordan in St. Simons and Jonathan Gilrath Harvey in North Georgia, and all 7 of the LGBTQ lawmakers are in Metro Atlanta. So I was going to ask, what's it going to take for an LGBTQ candidate to win in other places in the state?
Well, last year we did see Curtis Purdy win down in Savannah. And so, one, I think that breaks the myth that it cannot happen outside of the Metro Atlanta area. Curtis actually is starting to establish himself very much on the Savannah City Council. It's going to take people running, and unfortunately, it's going to take a while sometimes for people to win. Julie Jordan did a great job 2 years ago. She did a great job again this past election cycle. I wish that she had done a little bit better, but frankly, this is. We probably don't have time to really dissect everything about this election cycle today. I know that there's a lot of disappointment that there was not greater gains across the board for Democrats in the legislature. And so people need to be aware of the fact that we are going to have new districts that people will be running in 2022. When the census gets declared, there will be a special session next year, where districts will be redrawn, and I hope people will pay a lot of attention to that. We will be fighting hard to protect the districts of the incumbent LGBTQ folks down at the legislature, but last time we did redistricting, they specifically took Simone Bell and they put her into a district with another incumbent Democrat for the two of them to fight it out. And in fact, that happened throughout the Metro Atlanta area. It was, you just look at the maps, and it was pitting neighborhood against neighborhood, economic class against economic class. I think that we should expect to see those same sorts of gerrymandering shenanigans happen next summer. And we need to be prepared to call that out, and the community needs to be prepared to respond with anger when that happens, and to support the new crop of candidates that will be coming up in 22.
Well, Kim, I think you sort of alluded to this in your some earlier comments. Your win on Tuesday didn't happen overnight. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to put together a winning campaign and what motivated you to jump into the race?
Sure. So I began this journey over 18 months ago. I put in the chat, Project Q is the first kind of major group to recognize my candidacy. And you wrote an article about me, I think in July of 2019, maybe. But this has been a long time coming. I did the Victory Fund training. I did Georgia Winless. I did a ton of different trainings over the course of the years. But I also did, the work that Jeff is talking about, right? Building relationships with my neighbors, with the community. So people have known me for years, long before I ever put my name on a ballot. And I think that's just really important work to do. And then I needed to know, I knew I wanted to run for office. I've known that since I was 13, but there are a lot of different offices to choose from. And so I actually spent some real time kind of discerning what type of office I felt called to, what would be a good fit for my gifts and skills. And so I've spent time with county council. I don't live in a city, so that's not an option for me, but I've spent some time with the county council, and I spent a lot of time in the Capitol, listening to the sessions and watching how things run, and just getting a sense of what's possible. And I think that type of exploration is really important. And I actually want to address something that's in the chat, that Cole mentioned in the chat, just around what it means to support particularly Black queer candidates and women. And there's just, it's clear, there's great statistics around this, that women, period, and Black women and Black queer women especially, do not receive the same levels of financial support from wealthy LGBTQ folks. It's true. I mean, it's documented evidence that, if you put a Matthew Wilson, who is, he's a great guy, he's a dear friend of mine. If you take a white gay man and you stand him up beside a Black woman, a Black queer woman, and white gay men in particular, and I'm going to call you guys out today, white gay men in particular are much more inclined to give much more generously to a white gay male candidate than they are to a Black queer woman. And so these are issues that we do need to be talking about in the LGBT community. We need to be naming the facts that Black queer candidates are often not as well received or as well supported as white candidates are, and we've got to address that, right? We need to fix those issues, and there's a long history and there's reasons behind that, right? Because our communities, while we may share sexual orientation affiliations, racism is still real, and it has impact in our community as LGBTQ folks. And so we really do need to be speaking about that and talking about the ways that we can dismantle and break down those barriers, so that as LGBTQ people, totality as a community, we can continue to support each other.
Right. Outside of the LGBTQ wins on Tuesday, we also saw Nikema Williams succeed John Lewis, and for the 5th District congressional seat, Lucy McBeth turned back a challenge from Karen Handel, who has a lengthy LGBTQ track record, and 2 pro-equality Democrats are headed to runoffs in U.S. Senate races, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. Is this an encouraging sign for LGBT equality efforts in the state?
Yeah, I definitely so. I mean, I actually want to hear from Fred, but I have to jump in here because, again, as someone who's been doing this for a while, one of the things that I am so excited about is both John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock are making LGBTQ issues a part of their platform. This is astounding. This is pushing the needle. This is advancing LGBTQ equality here in Georgia. And I hope that everyone will understand the importance of those 2 seats headed to a runoff, especially with the fact that more than likely they will decide which party governs the Senate next year. And there has been some really great LGBTQ legislation that has come out of the House of Representatives the last 2 years, and it has not even been able to have a hearing in the Senate. So we need to have champions in the Senate, and we need to make sure that the environment in the U.S. Senate is going to be conducive so that we can actually have hearings and hopefully ultimately votes on some of this legislation. It's just been far too long since we've been able to pass anything. And I hope that we can prioritize that. And I hope that folks will be prepared to do the hard work over the next 9 weeks to pull off history 2 more times. And then in addition to that, I've known Nikema Williams for a long, long time. A lot of folks in the LGBT community may not know her, but I guarantee you, we could not have asked for a better champion and an ally to take over the seat of our beloved John Lewis. And so I am so excited for the future on a federal level about the possibilities to come.
Yeah, I mean, I echo all of that, right? There was a time in the 90s where there were Democrats who we were represented at one point by 2 Democrats in the United States Senate. And I just learned that one had an anti-equality record and didn't even know it. I learned that today before the call and talking to Jeff. Senator Sam Nunn's anti-LGBT record, which I think he's atoned for later in life. But that when he was representing Georgia, his views were well known. So we kind of moved from that to a sort of don't ask, don't tell era when it came to LGBTQ candidates, especially statewide. And then by the time you get to 2018, right, you have Grand Marshal of the parade as Stacey Abrams, who also spoke at Black Gay Pride in Piedmont Park next to one of the folks from Pose. And so, we've come a long way. And Stacey Abrams is getting a lot of credit today that's well deserved, but this is one place where she also deserves credit of showing, there's no need to be afraid of your own shadow, lean into it. And so that's exciting. And so now January 5th is a critically important date. It will determine the control of the United States Senate. And with that means that it will control whether or not soon to be President-elect Biden and then President Biden, whether the types of judges that he'll be able to appoint, whether he'll get to appoint judges at all, right? Let's be real. When President Obama was the president, a lot of his judges didn't get a hearing, and they even didn't give one of his Supreme Court judges a hearing, right? So that's very, very important. The type of people he'll be able to appoint to his cabinet will be determined by the Senate, and then pro-equality legislation, whether we'll finally pass an Equality Act, for example, will potentially depend on whether or not we get control of the United States Senate. And so, President Biden, soon to be President Biden, his hands will be absolutely tied across the board on virtually every issue, including LGBTQ issues. And so, Georgia, we did it once. It's time to do it again. It's time to text. It's time to call. It's time to, if you're in a position to do so, it's time to raise money. And it's time to say January 5th every chance you get. Every chance, like someone says, "Oh, sure, we won Georgia." January 5th. like that. I mean, we did this. That's great. We can celebrate a little bit, I suppose. But in the very next breath should be January 5th. That we should be working to elect a Senator Ossoff and a Senator Warnock, who will be champions for our cause. And more broadly, we'll be able to help move the country forward rather than face colossal obstruction. It'll also help send a message when this chapter of history is written, when the story of Trump and the story of Trumpism is written. It will be helpful to say, then he got defeated, and it will also be helpful to say, and then he won improbable. That he was defeated. When it came to the United States Senate, when it came to the Congress, that the nation sent a message that we are done with that. That is not who we are. We're not done saying that. We said it yesterday or on Tuesday. We're not done saying it. And so I didn't mean to preach, but I do feel strongly about it. January 5th.
Yeah, and I'll just add, those folks who were able to check the box that they were seniors or people who have disabilities or military, you will get your absentee ballot automatically in the mail. The county's participating appropriately. And so don't lose. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I talked to, and this surprised me, but a number of people who were like, yeah, I got an absentee ballot, or I got something in the mail, but I didn't know what it was, so I threw it away. Absentee ballots are coming to people who are 65 years and older, who have disabilities, who are service persons. Those are coming in the mail. Recognize what they are, fill them out, and put them in a drop box. This is really, really crucial. Don't just throw those away. These things do matter. They're incredibly important. And for those of you who have state level runoffs, so if you live in Nikema Williams' former district, you're going to get an absentee ballot automatically for December, and you'll get an absentee ballot automatically in January. And that's confusing as all get out, but you got to fill them all out both times, right? So And this is the work that we've got to do, is to make sure people cast those ballots. It's just essential.
Well, and we also saw outside of the federal level, locally, some big changes, continued changes in Gwinnett and Cobb counties, really a blue wave that continues through those two counties, where Democrats won races for county commission chairs, district attorneys, sheriffs, and some school board seats. That's got to be encouraging to all of you in terms of what that means for just LGBTQ issues as well as other progressive issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to, in many ways, the universe of LGBTQ Georgia has shifted to Gwinnett County. You've got State Representative Sam Park, State Representative-elect Sam Lim. You've got Ben Koo on the Gwinnett County Commission. You've got Everton Blair on the Gwinnett County School Board. So those are four out LGBTQ elected officials from Gwinnett County. In addition to that, we've got a sheriff that has not only pledged to pull Gwinnett County out of the horrible 287G program that it just stigmatizes immigrants and causes just over policing of local communities. But he also has said he wants to look at creating a better jail system specifically for transgender, gender nonconforming detainees to make sure that they are treated humanely and safely under his care. You've got a DA that has pledged to help us overturn or reform the Georgia HIV criminal justice law. You've got the chair of the Gwinnett County Commission that has pledged to bring up for a vote a countywide non-discrimination ordinance in Gwinnett County. Same thing in Cobb County. All those people who won offices, Georgia Equality supported them as well. They made similar pledges. And again, if folks remember what it was like in 1992, 1993, when Gwinnett County was so proud to go on the record of saying that homosexuality was against the community values of Cobb County, the efforts that cost them any sort of Olympic venue, the Olympic flame wouldn't even go through Cobb County. It was considered so anti-LGBTQ, so toxic to our community 25, 27 years ago. And now we're on the cusp of having Cobb County begin to embrace and act and move on pro-LGBTQ legislation. There's a lot of good stuff that is happening here in Georgia.
Fred or Kim, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I what's exciting is I don't think we're not going to go back. So, like I've been excited for this moment for a long time, and it's I call it it's the moment. So in the 1990s, I remember as a kid like watching election returns, and Illinois was a purple state, right? It was a state where you weren't quite sure how it was going to go, but at some point a tipping point happened. The Chicago got big enough and progressive enough, and by big enough, I don't just mean that in terms of the number of people in the city, but I mean more broadly, right? Because what has happened when we're saying Metro Atlanta now, we're not just talking about Fulton and DeKalb and Clayton. We're also talking about Rockdale and Newton, and obviously Gwinnett and Cobb. And Henry and Douglas, right? So when I say bigger, I mean it geographically bigger, and then just the number of people. And so at a certain point, what happens is that our voice will be particularly important on the stage. Now, with all of that, I do think it's also really important while doing all of that to remember that not everyone lives in the metro, and that there are people across the state. Some are Democrats, some are Republican, all different races, who are hurting and who are struggling, right? If you look at the election returns in Southwest Georgia in particular, they fell dramatically short of everywhere else. So in the average seat, average congressional seat, by my count, there was about 350,000 people who voted. There was about 240,000 people who voted. So there's a disconnect. There's a feeling so even as I say that we are reaching a tipping point and that Georgia is about to go blue, it's not going to go, at some point it won't be purple, it will be blue. But we have to remember that there are marginalized folks even as we move forward with this all across the state who it's important to listen to remember their pain, to invest in, and to lift up. But yeah, I'm feeling really good about what's taken place. And President Trump sped this along, and the very hard work by organizers sped this along, and also just people, I think, wanting to move to a new era sped this along in Gwinnett and in Cobb. And so yeah, no, I'm very excited. I mean, Cobb. I could not have imagined 4 years ago if someone told me 4 years from now, Cobb is going to overwhelmingly elect a Democratic county chairman. Oh, and by the way, she's a Black woman. I would have been a little skeptical. But yeah, so we're in new times. We're in a new era, and I already like it.
I just want to add, when we're talking about Southwest Georgia, I want to lift up, I'm looking at the map right now of the counties that have gone blue in Southwest Georgia. And it's not just Muskogee, and it's not just Macon. Like, we're talking about Terrell County, Randolph County, Clay County. Those counties have gone blue. Those rural people that we think are in Trump country have definitively said no to Donald Trump. And I think that is something that is worth celebrating. And it reminds us that when we don't take care of people who live in rural Georgia, so when farmers don't receive the subsidies that they needed because a hurricane came through and wiped out 90% of a pecan crop, they will go to the ballot. They might not tell their friends what they're doing, but they go to the ballot and they will not vote against their interests. For too long, we have assumed that rural people are committed to voting against their own interests. For too long, we have said that particularly country folks just don't know better. And I'm going to say, as a country folk, we do know better. And that's what we're seeing on this map when we look at rural Southwest Georgia. It's not just Albany, right? It's not just Columbus. It's not just the cities. We're seeing small counties vote blue. And we can continue that work. And as we're looking at 2022, like, hey, there are rural counties that we can pick up and we can carry. And I think it's important for folks to know that we are coming for those counties. We are coming for South Georgia because we know what's possible. When people see good people on the ballot, they are willing to cast a ballot for them.
Absolutely.
Well, so as we wrap up, I've got one last question for all of you. Where can people follow you and stay on top of what you're working on?
Great. Well, I'll start and say that you can certainly follow me on all social media handles at Kim for Georgia. So that's Kim FOR Georgia across all social media. And my website is also kimforgeorgia.com. So please follow me, like me, subscribe, I don't know, all those words. And most of all, I bid your support. When we return to the Capitol in January, come down if we're able to with COVID. And if we're not able to, send me a tweet, send me a shout out. But I need the support of the people. And y'all hold my feet to the fire too. Hold my feet to the fire. I want to be the representative, the senator that I said I would be. And so hold me accountable and support me along the way.
And my handle on Twitter and Facebook, Fred O. Smith Jr. And that's just JR, Fred O. Smith Jr. And you can always find me on my Emory website, and my email address is fred.smith@emory.edu if you ever need to get in touch with me.
Yeah, and for me, it's Georgia Equality. I still may be a little old school for folks, but I really encourage everybody to sign up for our email list. Go to our website, georgiaequality.org. That is the best way for us to connect directly with you and help you connect with your specific representatives, the people, your elected officials on a city, county, state, and federal level. There's a lot of excitement today. We've talked about all the good stuff, but we've got a lot of work to go. There's a lot of folks, not just in the LGBTQ community, but in ally communities, people of color, women, poor people here in the state of Georgia, immigrants here in the state of Georgia and around the country. And the best way for us to let you know when legislation is starting to move and how you can take action to support the good stuff and fight against the bad stuff is to be on our email list. Right now, we've got about 40,000 folks, which is great, but there's about 450,000 LGBTQ folks here in Georgia. We know that we have, each of us has probably 5 people in our lives that would like to stand up and support us. So we really should have an email list that is 100,000 or 200,000 people long. That's when we can really begin to change Georgia for the better. And so I encourage folks to sign up so that you know how to be involved when we get into the legislative fights of 2021 that we know are coming.
Absolutely. So Jeff, are you saying you don't have a TikTok channel?
I don't have a TikTok channel, much to the chagrin of my staff that has threatened that I need to have TikTok, but no TikTok yet. And my Instagram is mostly about my dog Josie. So, which
is awesome, by the way. I enjoy following that. But a big thank you to Fred and Jeff and Senator-elect, I love saying that, Senator-elect Kim Jackson for their time today. And thank you to everyone who attended. Have a great weekend and stay safe. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.